Hello, friends. Welcome to the Cold War Prepper. This is Lee, and tonight we're doing our post-apocalyptic nonfiction book club. Welcome, John and Rebecca. Got each of you on a separate device, I guess, signed in. Thank you very much. Little Lone Prepper. Little Lone Prepper is from North Carolina, I believe. Welcome. Happy to see you as well. So we've got two. What happened? I thought we had John and Rebecca on separate machines, but and then if you add Little Lone Prepper, it says, there we go. Now we're showing three. All right, that looks good. Wow. Did you see the news? Matt Gaetz was successful. Hello, Diana, too, in removing Kevin McCarthy as the Speaker of the House. Who would have ever thought that that was possible? Of course, he had the entire Democrat Party supporting him in that move, but golly, who would have ever thought that possible? Unbelievable. So I'm just back. We had our National Neighborhood Night Out this evening, and so one of the guys in our neighborhood got all of the people who own businesses here in the neighborhood together, and he kind of sponsored it. Hello, Holly Ivans. And so they sponsored it. Probably the biggest, most successful National Neighborhood Night Out that we've had in the 8 years that we've lived here. Just phenomenal. I had a good chance to talk to one of the big sponsors, Matt, and not this Matt, a different Matt. And but anyhow, he and I are talking. He also owns a solar company. So I'm going to try to get David Lynn, Prepper Principal. That's a fantastic channel you all need to subscribe to, at David Lynn, Prepper Principal. And then I'm going to get Matt Netzel on, and we're going to have him and his solar company manager on to talk about solar power. And so we can get all of them on one night, and we'll talk about solar and what we're doing there. Matt is also a Purple Heart winner from Afghanistan. He served in both Afghanistan and Iraq, but he got his Purple Heart from Afghanistan, and then basically was medically discharged after several spine surgeries. But phenomenal guy. He's part of those of us who are aware that we need to have things in a post-apocalyptic world slightly different than what we are in a pre-apocalyptic world. So he's going to be really great to have on and have a discussion with. Hello, Pat. Hello, Sue Mi. Welcome. So I think Sue Mi is from Korea, and she knows so much about our government and the Constitution. And just last night, she was a charm, kept me straight. And then we've got a couple other people who kept me straight as well. So thank you so much. Listen, I am not egotistical, okay? So, you can take Sumi's word, you can Theoxerus, a couple others. If I make a mistake, do me a favor. In my opinion, your survival, your ability to have the correct information is far more important than my ego. So if I make a mistake, please, let's make sure it's straight and we only have good information going out to the people who subscribe to this channel. And so, I don't want opinions. I want good, hard facts. We want to make sure we have good, hard facts going out to people so that we can, because this is a phenomenal group of people who follow us. And I just want to make sure that they all have the best possible information in order to survive as well as they possibly can in a post-apocalyptic world. Hello, Clarity Jane. Welcome. A Canuck. Okay. Wow. And you know more about our government than a lot of our own citizens. That is phenomenal. Thank you. I saw I was watching one of those man of the streets where they walk up and ask people different questions. And so they were asking, what is the capital of Canada? And they interviewed 10 people. Out of the 10, only one knew. So that was kind of interesting. A lot of people know more about the U.S. than we know about other countries. Doesn't that kind of Doesn't that kind of make us embarrassed that we aren't quite as international as a lot of other people? Okay, I've got the link up for this book, the book on situational awareness by Matt Patrick Kelly. I'm only giving you a third in each one of these discussions on each one of these major topics of what he has in the book. I'm definitely not covering the practical exercises that he gives you to do, the recommendations. His recommendation is that you take a year to do this book. There's 52 exercises, 52 different things that you can do. So it's divided up into fours, and each one of his topics is designed for you to practice for a full week, so that you can improve your overall situational awareness of things going on around you. Quite often, as we're getting now into the advanced and some of the more advanced stuff, he refers back to the others as the basic skills and says, now remember when you did this, we have to take that and build upon it in order to do what you're going to do next. So it is a building scenario that you basically start functioning in the first portion, and then you keep on moving up and improving your skills. So, gosh, we've got 12 people on already. Phenomenal. So let's go ahead and get started. I've only picked like 5 or 6 topics to talk about tonight. So the first one we're going to do, of course, is going to be, well, this is his here's the order from Amazon, if you would, for his phenomenal book. So the first principle we're going to study this evening is back it up, back it in. And this is a military technique. It's also used by the police and the fire department. Whenever possible, we want to back our vehicle into a parking space, back it into your driveway, whatever. Of course, I have a pickup. So with a pickup, a long bed pickup, the turning radius, if trying to get out, back out, if there's a car directly across the street parked in front of our driveway, it takes me 5 or 6 juxtapositions to get my pickup out of the driveway. So I have to park mine nose out. And that way I can definitely get out a lot easier. It also, what I can do, because of the way the steering mechanism is if there's this one car, and I talked to the owner of that company today and said, hey, if one of your employees drives this car, would you do me a favor and ask them to back up about 1 car length, because I can't get in and out of my driveway. But what I can do is I can pull up in front of them and then kind of weave back in if I back into my driveway. If I wanted to go straight in with my pickup, I couldn't do it. So one of the things that we want you to be aware of is back in to your driveway, back into your parking space when you go to a grocery store or something like that. In order for you to get out, especially in a large crowd, back into the parking space, and that will help you to get out a lot easier and a lot quicker. Oh, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah, it's crazy. And it's really funny. There's a lot of things. I saw some people, they were asking things about even states and things like that. And Americans just terrible with geography. Um, one of the things that's really neat that I think most people don't understand is if you take a look at the globe, where I am in the Austin, Texas area, if you draw a line latitudinally and go across, Austin is approximately the same latitude as Cairo, Egypt. And the vast majority of the United States would fit into what is the Mediterranean Sea. So when I was in Germany, if you take where Germany is and you look across latitudinally, that ends up being in the middle of the Hudson Bay. So, that's unbelievable how far north Europe really is. And most Americans don't realize that. Same thing going across, how far north Japan and Korea are, just unbelievable. Philippines is pretty much about the same latitude, but, there's so much stuff. Here's a real neat trivia question for you that most Americans can't get either. If you're going from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean in the Panama Canal, what direction do you travel? So if you're going from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, what direction do you go? Um, you go from the Pacific to the Atlantic Ocean. So I'm going to call this up here for you real quick. Panama Canal, Panama. Because you aren't going to believe this. This is unbelievable. Okay, so now I want to present. Hello, Butch. Welcome. Let me see. We were in there when my son was about 7. He wanted his allowance, but it was 3 days early. I wouldn't give it to him. He said, "That's communism." I replied, "Yep, and I'm the dictator." Oh, that's fantastic. Let me present this to you. So we're going to do a share screen. Most Americans don't realize this, but when you go from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, actually to the Caribbean Sea, on the Panama Canal, believe it or not, you head the opposite direction from what seems logical. And that is, so here we are. This is the Pacific here, okay? And this is the Caribbean or Atlantic here. So in order to go from the Pacific, go from west to east, you actually travel northwest because of the shape of the canal. So here we go. So you're looking at the Pacific Ocean. Here you're looking at the Caribbean Sea. And so to get from, to go east across the isthmus, you actually had to head northwest. Isn't that neat? Most people don't realize that. So Sue Me, you're absolutely correct. It is northwest. You head northwest to get from west to east. To go from west to east, you have to head northwest. Isn't that's something? Okay, so that was number one. And that was back your car in. And ooh, Cold War Prepper, that is not true. Let me see what it is here. No, it's on a religious thing. So, okay. Number two. Oops, let me get rid of it. You don't want that. That's the Franciscans. Uh, doing we have a book club with the Franciscan friars, and so this year we're doing the Confessions by Saint Augustine, and so that's what that was you heard. I actually hit on that tab while I was um, in that thing. Wolves travel in packs. So let me kind of read a little bit of this to you because this is really neat. So look for groups, but don't just look for the groups, identify the groups and the ones that are going to be negative for you. As you go out each day this week, look for and identify groups of people. Look for who the leader is. Look for how you can identify the leader. Who are people deferring to? Look for who the minions are. They're usually going to be the outer layers of that group. So when you go look in a playground, for example, kids divvy up into groups. And so which groups are which? And are they friendly to each other? Subsocial groups, are they opposed to each other? Do they have opposing leaders? Take a look as you look around you in society and in as you walk around, take a look for groups. Take a look at natural groupings at a table. When you go to restaurants, take a look at who sits together at church or who sits together at different events and things like that. Do you see the same people gathering at the same bars or the same vehicles or whatever on a regular basis? And, pay attention to how people associate and affiliate with each other. That can give you an awful lot of information about who your opposition could possibly be. You can also see how they interact with other people. Are they gracious? Are they kind and understanding, or are they dogmatic and basically autocratic? And do they bully people? So you have bully groups and you have good groups. And so, kind of watch out for how are they interacting with other people? What do you believe that their purpose is? And is that going to then be a threat to you, or is that going to be something that you can leverage, that you can try to become a member of? And so pay attention. Remember that the lone people, the people who are out there all by themselves, those are the people who are not members of packs, and they're probably not going to be that big of a threat to you. Now, why do we say wolves travel in packs? Because the alpha wolf is going to attract people who want to be under the alpha wolf's protection. So you got to find that one person. You got this one person who's going to be the guy in charge. And everybody feels that by following that one leader, they are going to be protected. They're going to gain strength from that leader rather than strength from among themselves. So, as you go out in public, watch what are the natural groupings, who are the leaders, who are the minions, how do they conduct themselves. You can learn an awful lot just by paying attention to the groups. The next one, he calls it, "Oh, Mickey, you're so fine. Create a bubble around you." So we talked about the first thing being have an escape path. Now, we talked about it either last week or the week before, that when you're in traffic, don't get bumper to bumper at a stoplight or anything when you're with another car. I love it when there's an intervening side street and I can leave that entire area for that side street so cars to get in or turn or whatever. That gives me a large escape route. But I try to stay, at least 5 to 10 feet away from the car in front of me when I stop at a stoplight. Well, that's kind of what we're doing now. We're taking that same concept that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and we're saying create a bubble around you. Don't get hemmed in by people as you're walking down the street. Um, kind of think about an arm's length away from you. Try to stay at least an arm's length away from people. I walk with a cane. One of the best things that anybody can do, whether you need the cane or not, there is something called cane fighting. And unfortunately, I left my cane at my brother-in-law's. I can't believe I know how I did it. I hung it on a walker that I had been using, and instead of putting it in the sill next to the seat of the pickup. And we got maybe 20 miles away, and I looked down and I didn't see my cane. I realized I left it. And so my brother-in-law picked it up, and it's at his house in Central Texas, about a 3-hour drive away. And but we've got a meeting. We're going to have lunch together next Wednesday, a week from tomorrow. So he's going to bring me my fighting cane. But it's a special hickory cane. So my typical cane is the one that was issued to me in the Army is round. It's oak. It's heavy. It has a rubber tip, but it has a very closed horn. So you can't spin it. You can barely get your hand inside of it. My fighting cane is octagonal hickory. And and instead of having a rubber tip down at the bottom, it just has a plastic cap. And that makes it a little bit more dangerous when you hit with it. It also has, instead of a rounded, when you come around the horn, instead of the tip of that horn being rounded, like my medical cane that was issued by the Army, it has a fighting tip, which it comes to what they call a bird's beak. So it comes down very, very sharp and pointy so that you can use it to grab and tear tendons and things like that. So you can use a cane for fighting. If you use it, if you carry it with you and you walk with it, it can be a phenomenal defensive. Hello, Matthew. Welcome. But it can be a fantastic defensive tool. So that is one of those things you can use within that arm's radius of keeping people away from you. Now, if they get too close, instead of using it as to swing it and what they call a power stroke, instead you use it then as a truncheon, and you push with it, and you're going to push people in the solar plexus or in the stomach with that pointy end, or pull with the cook or something like that. But think of what are the different defensive techniques that you can use once people get inside your personal space, inside that bubble, and be cautious of people who are inside that bubble. That becomes an immediate threat, whether they appear to be a threat or not. Consider them an immediate threat, and just watch out for that. You know, I've commented about this before, but our society has definitely changed. When I was growing up, in black, and we only had three channels of black and white TV. Um, we stayed outside and played with the street lights until the street lights came on, and we'd play all kinds of different things, kickball, um, cowboys and Indians and war and everything else. I mean, we just played all kinds of stuff, and there were probably about 20 kids on our street. The parents would all sit out in the front porch and drink iced tea and talk and joke and everything else. Then TV got really good. We started getting some good programming, and I remember one of the first ones we'd go in to watch was Rawhide, Rowdy Yates with Clint Eastwood, his first starring role. And so the families then, instead of being outside with their kids and instead of the kids being outside playing with each other, we started moving inside to watch TV. So I'm going to blame television on basically the destruction of the neighborhood. And now it's even more so now that we have all these different channels and everything else. People get so this is going to sound, I don't want it to sound weird, self-centered, but it's not self-centered. They become so self-centric, let's put it that way. That's not quite as harsh. Where more things are involved inside the house. Now that we've got these stupid things, you'll see couples on a date communicating with each other through texting instead of talking, and it's just crazy. But you're right. So I don't think that your neighborhood is that much stranger than any other neighborhood. We met all kinds of new neighbors tonight at the National Neighborhood Night Out. I'm talking with Matt, who sponsored it. He paid for the pizzas. He probably bought 30 or 40 pizzas. He bought a PlayStation 1 to raffle away. I mean, he did a lot. He bought a couple cases of beer and had them iced down, a couple cases of ice water, a couple jugs of iced tea. He spent a lot of money to get the neighborhood out and intermingle with each other. And it was a great thing that we did. We need more of that. So, I mean, it's just, we are too internalized and we don't go out enough. Let me see. Yeah, the Stratford wives, Stratford wives. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that's a great movie. That's basically what do they call it? IA or AI, artificial intelligence, robot wives. Yep. Um, yeah, isn't that something? So now we have to schedule playtimes for kids to get together instead of letting them do it naturally. But with this thing we had to happen in New York, where the family was out camping, and they went around riding bikes, and they let the 9-year-old daughter, go around one circle on her own, and she got kidnapped during that one revolution. Unbelievable. I can see why a lot of parents want to schedule time out instead of just letting the kids outside and letting them do their thing. We have gotten into a very um, dangerous society. And I think all this stuff that we have going on where we're not prosecuting people to the maximum extent of the law, we need to make it so that breaking the law is disadvantageous to the lawbreaker, to the point that other people say, I don't want to do that poo-poo. I don't want that to happen to me. And, what they did to him or her. And so, I think that this zero bail and zero bond and all this kinds of stuff, and not prosecuting things like theft of a store under $1,000, all that kinds of stuff. That's crazy. We need to make examples of those people and let people know, hey, this is what happens to you if you do stupid stuff. Let me see here. Okay. So the next one is Ain't No Sunshine. So one of the earlier chapters, he also talked about, what you can do is, practice using your flashlight, practice using, which ones are good, how do you use them, and everything else. So tonight, he's kind of building on that a little bit better. And he says, what happens if you don't have a flashlight? So our eyes are made up of two things. It's made up of cones and rods. So the cones primarily detect color, and they're best used during the daytime. The rods, there's over 100 million rods, and the rods are fixed. Okay, so they fixed on a certain point, and they only detect black and white. But they really are good at detecting movement. So when the lights go out, your cones are no longer effective. Your rods become your primary means of vision. So if you can train your eyes by going without light for a while, you can train your eyes to better night vision. Now, this is kind of supplemented. If you've read any of Selko Begovich's books about the Bosnian War, and it looks like that's going to kick off again. Serbia, Croatia, and Bosnia are kind of all amassing troops on the border as we speak. But Selko Begovic talks about how candles and lights and flashlights were really important for the first 6 months after the war started, and then people just got accustomed to not having flashlights and things like that. So their eyes then adjusted to the darkness, so that as their eyes adjusted, they didn't need flashlights anymore. So one of the exercises that he's going to have you do in here is basically training your eyes so that you don't need flashlights to the extent that we do now. That you can train your eyes to go back to that state where you're actually almost as effective as with a flashlight without one. Now we have all kinds of ambient light around us, city lights and things like that. I encourage you. The Gila National Wilderness in Gila, New Mexico is unbelievable. They don't allow any vehicular traffic off the roads. So if you take a pack mule or a horse and you go out a little bit of ways, you're away from all the ambient light, and the number of stars are unbelievable. The same thing if you go to Big Bend. When you're at Big Bend and there's no other light around, I mean, now all we see are some of the major stars, but when you go to Big Bend, it's difficult to pick out some of the major stars because of the number of stars that you're going to see when there aren't a whole bunch of other lights distracting you from the lights of the stars themselves. Let me. This is why I wanted to add this in there. This is one. You have 100 million rods in each eye, and so the best thing to do is at nighttime. Remember, those rods only pick up movement. So if you're in a dark area and you feel like you're threatened or frightened, the best thing you can do is freeze, because the attacker won't see anything except for movement. And so, if you freeze, they aren't going to see you, and they'll be moving. You can see them. Okay. And then also you want to look through your peripheral vision. Now, the way to overcome somebody who has frozen is to keep your eyes moving. So if you stop and you freeze, and now my rods are my cones are no longer effective because you've frozen. My rods only detect movement. The only way I can see you is if I move my eyes, and then my eyes create that movement. Now I can see you, even though you're frozen. But most people don't know that. Just move your head, and that creates the movement of the body as far as your eyes are concerned. And you've created an artificial flashlight by using the rods in your eyes. Let me see here. Yeah, and eat your carrots. Absolutely. What is that? Vitamin D, I think, that enhances your overall eyesight. Um, wow. Yeah, that was terrible. And it looks like it's going to happen again. And that's primarily religious stuff that's going on there. It's Muslim versus Orthodox in that area. So, you know, I tell you, the two best places I've seen the night sky are the Gila National Wilderness in the middle of New Mexico, and Big Bend National Park. And the bad thing is, I'm a native Texan, so you know, I was 30. Gosh, let me see. It was 1982 when I went to Big Bend, so I was 30 years old before I ever went to Big Bend, and I can't believe that because I grew up so close to it. Um, you know, But that's just the way it is. Make me jealous. I can't do that with all the city lights around here. Oh, wow. Thank you, Clarity Jane, for sharing that. So I'm going to leave that up for a while. But everybody, Clarity Jane says that Algerson Farms has a lot of their number 10 cans on sale, 40 to 50% off. Now, not any of the meats, but a lot of the basic stuff. So I'm assuming, vegetables, and they also have a biscuit, scone, and roll mix that is pretty good. They just had that sale on butter here that I showed in my haul video this last Saturday. So somebody told me about that. One of you subscribers, in the comments to a video last week, told me that their butter was on sale from $49 down to $19 or something like that. So I picked up a can of that, along with a can of uh, roll, scone, and bread mix or biscuit mix or something. So yeah. Okay. Um, so another one he calls is to do an exercise on a regular basis called less than 1%. And what this exercise is basically, um, he wants you to go out and practice being out in the world with less than the full senses or organs that you normally have available to you. So, for example, close one eye when you're out in public. Deprive yourself of the opportunity to have three dimensions, and you just use one eye so that you're only getting two dimensions. And what does that do to how you're functioning in public? Or cover one ear so that you can only hear from one side. Or what can you do to diminish your senses? Because what you'll find is that by diminishing your senses on in one area, you enhance the senses in another area. So for example, you see a lot of blind musicians because since their brain doesn't have any vision to process, their brain starts processing other things. And one of the things that they process a lot finer than we do is that they'll take what they were using to process vision and move it over to process sound. And so that way they have a more finely tuned sense of sound. They also have a greater fifth sense or sixth sense in the sense that they can perceive vibrations or movement or other things that are in their area that we don't because our mind is functioning at 100% of all of our senses. And so we're constantly processing a whole bunch of information, whereas they're processing a little bit more centralized or focused attention on some of their senses. And so some of the things that he says you can do to enhance your overall sense of awareness, to begin developing an enhancement in some of your other sensors, are use one eye, impair your hearing, have one earbud in or something like that. What can you do if you are deprived food? Now, this is one of those things that there are two things that you're going to have in a post-apocalyptic world that are going to affect your overall ability to think, react, interpret, and everything else. One of them is going to be lack of food or water. So, what can you start training your body now to do on less food and water, so that it doesn't become a shock when you're actually doing without less food and water? And the second one is if you don't sleep enough, then your body doesn't have enough rest, then it can't process all that sensual input. So, can you start practicing sleeping less? And one of the things I can tell you for certain, when I was on active duty, we would work. We try not to put a soldier on guard duty for more than 1 or 2 hours at a time, because they'll fall asleep. But so that means that if you're only getting in 1 or 2 hours of guard duty, you're probably going to get woken up once or twice in the middle of your sleep period. So we train in the military to sleep on 2 or 3 hour naps that are interspersed throughout, so that you're getting your 8 hours of sleep, but it's just in 2 or 3 hour increments. And that way you're building it up over time. How do you get that rest? And I can tell you, when I was on active duty, now, at 1 o'clock in the morning, if I was the field duty officer, I could at 1 o'clock in the morning have a full cup of coffee, GI coffee, full caffeine, be sipping it, put the coffee down, and fall asleep. I mean, that's the way you're trained. And now, if I have anything with caffeine after 6 p.m., I'm up until 2 o'clock, and just the way we are trained different. I'm sure I could get back to that same sense that I probably had when I was on active duty, but you got to train your body to do things like that. And so that's one of the things the SEALs are exceptional at, is that the SEALs deprive themselves of all kinds of things, and they push their body to the limits so that they are constantly in a high state of readiness, physically, metaphysically, emotionally, mentally. I mean, they are just phenomenal in some of the stuff that they do as far as their bodies. If you read Lone Survivor and some of the stuff they did, being shot as many times as they were shot, and then still be able to pursue the fight, it's unbelievable. Another good example was, what's the name of that movie? 13 Hours, I believe. The story of the assault on Benghazi, the U.S. consulate in Benghazi. And some of those guys, one guy lost his hand, and he was walking around with his hand just barely hanging on by a thread of skin, and he was still using his thumb and finger and finger to shoot. So, I mean, and he was an ex-SEAL. So, some of the things those guys do and what they've done to train themselves to overcome pain, to focus on the other things that are essential for staying alive is just unbelievable. Um, Carrots are vitamin A. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. When you get to be as old as I am, I typically only eat one meal a day. I took Helen to dinner yesterday to an Italian restaurant for her birthday, and we brought home food because what most people eat for a meal, the two of us, that's an entire day's worth of food. We don't eat as much as we used to. Um, and we don't eat as late as we used to either. And so, yeah, we can do without food, but we've got water falls into that rule of threes. They say that you can last 3 hours without shelter in extreme climates, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. So yeah, so water is far, far, far more important. Yes, yeah. So especially high sugar content stuff. So we tried to keep candy bars and things like that. We had a lot of hard candy, especially in the more temperate climates when it was really, really hot. Lifesavers and butterscotch, butter rum lifesavers and wintergreen lifesavers and things like that. Just things. And you also want things that are a little bit on the spicy side, like the wintergreen or peppermint lifesavers, because that's also kind of a shock to your body. And that will also kind of keep you awake and alert. So that's great. Um, oh, thank you, Sumi. Oh, okay. So Clarity Jane is saying, I get it now. Clarity Jane is saying that there is the Algerson Farms sale is on Amazon's site, not off of the Algerson Farms website. So go to Amazon and look for the Algerson Farms items on sale on their website, on the Amazon website, which is great. And I prefer that too, because then you're going to get free shipping. I was going to order some stuff from Walmart yesterday, I cannot find Yoder's canned bacon anywhere. I was going to order a couple more cans of that, but I can't find it anywhere. And so I was on Walmart's site yesterday, and hello, Muskoka Oma, and I got what I wanted. But then in order to get free shipping, which would have been saved me $8, I would have had to spend another $16, $35 to get free shipping. And so it's still in the basket. I haven't found what I want to spend money on yet in order to get that free shipping. Okay, so those are the 6 that I picked to discuss this evening, and we'll finish this book up next week. This is a phenomenal book. I strongly recommend it. Great one to have to your in your prepper library. A great one to actually work on do the exercises. One exercise a week. Do it for a week, and I think that'll make you a far better aware and self-defensive capable individual. So now that all that's done, anything anybody would like to talk about? Can you believe removing McCarthy? I'm still in shock about that. I can't believe that was able to be done. But he was kind of a centrist and a little bit left of where a lot of the conservatives would have liked for him to have been. Don't know what happened. We really don't know that. We do know that there were some secret negotiations going on between him and President Biden. And the original bill that they were going to vote on over the weekend, evidently the president told the House Minority Leader, which would be Representative Pelosi, not to vote for it. And so she was talking with McCarthy evidently and told him that. So McCarthy had a secret conversation with President Biden, and don't know what the agreement is, but President Biden called Pelosi and told her, okay, y'all can vote for it. So they voted for the continuing resolution that allowed us to keep the government open. And, so there's a lot of suspicion about what happened. Of course, Matt Gaetz is an ultra-conservative, so he disagreed with that, and he began the process of removing McCarthy from the speakership, and he was successful at that. And golly, I'm still in shock over that. Just it's got me. Okay, so what do I want to talk about? What I really want to talk about is we've got something going on tomorrow, and I think people misunderstand it. There's an awful lot of people. There's an awful lot of things that people don't understand. Will Rogers once said, "It's not what you know that gets you in trouble. It's what you think you know that just isn't so that gets you in trouble." So there's an awful lot of people saying an awful lot of different things about the nationwide emergency response alert tomorrow, practice tomorrow, that it's going to fry your cell phones, that it's the government trying to take over different things and everything else. So let's be honest. Let's take a look at a little bit of history. When I was growing up, we had what was called CONELRAD, and that was the Continental Radio Control or Control of Radio. I forget what it was called. That was replaced by the emergency alert system that we had until 1995. So what happened was they had these beeps that would come over your radio, and then it said, it's a national emergency. Tune your radios to, I think it was 640 and 1240, 640 and 1240 AM to receive further instructions. That was tested at a state level on a regular basis. I think it was like the first Tuesday of every month, first Monday of every month at 11 o'clock or something like that. When President Reagan came in, wait, just 1 second. The older Chihuahua is very demanding for 1 second. So it got to the point where she couldn't jump up and down, up on the couch or jump off. So I bought her some steps. And now she's so old that she can't even get up past the first step. So she'll stand there and go, oh, 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 at me so that I'll go over and pick her up and put her on the couch. She's 16 now. Unbelievable. She's a sweetheart. But so we had these statewide tests, but we never had a national test. Then President Reagan came in, and President Reagan said, maintaining all these fallout shelters, because think of you had to build the shelter, then you had to equip it. You had to equip it with sleeping materials, toiletries, you had to equip it with food, water, everything else. Well, you know what happens if you want to secure the property that's there, you got to lock it. But if you lock it and we have an emergency, people can't get in to use it. So in order to use it, you have to leave it unlocked. If you leave it unlocked, it gets pilfered. And that's that whole thing about our society, And so President Reagan said, well, if we're going to have Star Wars, with Star Wars, if they shoot a rocket at us, we're going to shoot that rocket down, blow it up before it ever gets to the U.S. So we don't have to have all these bomb shelters. We don't have to have this national warning system, this emergency alert system, because there is no threat. They're not going to be able to hit us. Well, come 40 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later, after President Reagan, turns out that now they have hypersonic rockets. It turns out that our rockets are not as effective in shooting them down as we originally thought. We are way behind the Powerball as far as having fallout shelters or even bomb shelters. We certainly don't have them equipped, and equipping them would probably, if you think we're bankrupt now, it would probably double the cost of our budget. And so now we go back to the thing where we're going to count on individuals to be prepared in their own homes. And so one of the ways that we can tell people to be prepared, stay away, don't go outside, don't look at the flash, try to create a small, if necessary, fallout shelter inside your own abode, is we're going to come up with a form of an emergency alert system. Well, like here we have tornado sirens like you would not believe. And then we also have reverse 911. They'll call us and say, hey, watch out. There's been a tornado on the ground sighted at such and such a place. Of course, we also use this for the Amber Alerts and everything else. Now that we've developed that technology, the federal government says, hey, we can use that technology and we can alert people as soon as we detect an incoming missile. We can alert people, give them the opportunity to hunker down and be prepared to be hit by an international ballistic missile. And International Strategic ISBM. And so that's what this is they're trying to start that system tomorrow, just letting us know, hey, this is an advance warning. If something happens, you would receive further instructions as this is what it's going to be. So why is it becoming important now? Well, they have developed their submarine forces to the point to where they could have a sub out in the Gulf of Mexico, and you no longer have to launch an intercontinental ballistic missile over the North Pole. That would have taken approximately 30 minutes from launch time to striking in the United States. Now, you can get a launch in the Gulf of Mexico, hit Kansas City in something like 7 to 9 minutes. So, the whole warning system has been truncated. So that's what they want to do, is they want to see if they can give us enough advance warning where any radar detection of an incoming missile, whether it be sea launched from the Atlantic, the Pacific, or the Gulf of Mexico, or whether it be an ICBM coming over the horizon, over the North Pole, we have enough time to react and protect ourselves. I think that's all it is. I don't think there's anything to be worried about. I think, however, that one of the things you do need to do is, starting 2 weeks from tonight, be with us as we start going through this book one chapter at a time. And so, we're going to start talking about some of the things you need to be aware of. You can, there are some interesting things. For example, 75% of the people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki survived. I want you to think, you see all these things about how we're going to have a post-apocalyptic sandstorm and it's going to be Mad Max and everything else. That's not what we saw in Nagasaki and Hiroshima afterwards, right? There wasn't a whole bunch of fallout and everything else. There was a movie when I was a kid starring James Gardner, and it was called On the Beach. And so the submarine was the last remaining humans alive because everything above ground, above water, was radioactive. And they were inside this submarine down in the ocean, so they didn't get the fallout. And they stayed down long enough to where they came up, and all of a sudden they were there, and there's nothing left of the world. That's not going to happen. I think it's going to be airbursts. I don't think they're going to want to destroy the country that they want to occupy because of its resources and capabilities. So I would not be too concerned about what's going to be happening tomorrow. The Russians did it today. Okay. They had their national broadcast of their emergency alert system. People went orderly now they have underground railroads, and subways and all that kinds of stuff. And they do have bomb shelters in Russia. So they all had that orderly transition. They weren't freaked out about it and everything else. And evidently everything went fine. However, one thing I would say is just be cautious. If we know that there is a scheduled practice tomorrow that's going to take place for an hour and people are going to fart off the practice, what a great time to do the real thing when everybody has it in their minds that, oh, I don't have to participate. This is just really a practice. So if it were me and I were the aggressor, man, I tell you, tomorrow when we're doing the practice is when I would do it, because 95% of the people are going to say, oh, it's just part of the practice. So I think McCarthy did what the majority of his party wanted him to do. There is a difference between the Democrat Party and the Republican Party in one sense. The Democrats block vote. I don't care. You either do what Nancy Pelosi says you're going to do, or you're out of the party. You don't get any positions on any of the committees. You don't get any funding from the National Democratic Party for your reelection. You do what the party tells you to do, regardless of whether you're a conservative Democrat, a liberal Democrat, a far left communist Democrat. It doesn't matter. You do what the party tells you. Republicans, on the other hand, are a little bit more libertarian, and everyone wants to do their own thing. So it's not as unified of a party as is the Democrat Party. So you've got this far right wing, what's called the MAGA wing, of Matt Gaetz and people like him. There's about 8 of them on that wing that are ultra conservative in comparison to the rest of the party. And so what they were able to do was their 8 votes plus the Democrats was enough to get rid of McCarthy. So, that's a very small faction plus the opposition joined together can get rid of somebody in the middle. I do think that McCarthy was a little bit too centrist and not wanting to do some of the things that were necessary in order to move the country in the direction it needs to go. We had a high today of 94. So, but we are supposed to be like in the 50s later on this week by Friday. So little known purposes, the only fallout shelter she's aware of was in the basement of the old courthouse, but now that basement is going to be a restaurant and bar. So that's what I'm talking about. We didn't have any in the other thing is European cities, and you can almost see it here in the United States, and the Mississippi River is kind of the divide. European cities have a tendency to build up. So when you build up, you have a higher density of population in a smaller area. So when you build up, you also have a tendency to build down, and there's softer ground underneath. So you can build, tunnels and subways and shelters and things like that. Now, once you get west of the Mississippi, now we're taking a look at things don't go up, they go out. So when things go out, you have a lower population density. So in order to have a bomb shelter that's effective, people are going to have to do a lot of transportation to get to it in order for it to be strategically located where it's going to be effective for a whole bunch of people. And so it kind of loses its purpose when you have to travel a whole lot of distance to get to one. And so Uh, that's kind of one of the major things out in the western portion. Now, that an exception of that is probably San Francisco. They built up a little bit more than some of the other areas. I would say San Francisco is more built up than is Oakland, let's say, or is Berkeley. Los Angeles certainly went out, spread out. Phoenix is very spread out. Chicago is kind of a combination. It's a hybrid. St. Louis is very spread out. So if you take a look at most of these metropolitan areas west of the Mississippi, they've grown outwards instead of upwards. Houston is a prime example of a city that's really sprawled out and there's nothing. Now, what that also does is that makes public transportation very ineffective because you've got to cover all these large distances. So in order to make it effective, you have to have a minimum number of stops. Well, in Europe, when I took the subway system or the streetcar system, it stopped about every 6 blocks, but that's okay because you didn't have the wide cities like we do here. Here, if you stop every 6 blocks, it's going to take you an hour to get across the city. And so just the difference in how things are laid out. So that's why I don't think we have the bomb shelters and why I don't think they'll be coming back. Wow, a freeze warning. And you said that's in Colorado, right, Butch? Um, Hakeem Jeffries is the minority leader. Thank you, Diana. Yeah, replacing Nancy. I think 28 centigrade is somewhere in the low 90s. Let me check here. I'll do it. We'll do a convert. 28C to Fahrenheit. 82.4. So in the low 80s. Okay, the Four Corners area. I don't know if you notice it or not, but I have an old civil defense fallout shelter sign and it's facing away from us right now. But on my blackboard, I have that board that I use as a backboard for all of my um, food videos and I do for my haul videos. But if you look up in the upper right center panel, there is a fallout shelter, civil defense fallout shelter, one of the old aluminum fallout shelter designations. Then if you look on the far left, I have one that says this building or the block air raid warden lives in this building. And that's another one of those old ancient signs. Okay, so don't be afraid about tomorrow. Participate, be aware, and let's hope that it's successful. Let's hope that everybody gets the message that they need because I have a feeling it's going to be happening sooner than what we want. So that's pretty much it. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to discuss this evening? We got about 5 minutes left. No, we got 2 minutes left. Yeah, 2 minutes. Okay, one more chapter next week. Don't forget to order your copy of Nuclear War Survival Skills. It'll be in the show notes. My Amazon link for it if you want to get it. That is the third version. So third edition of the book. It has a lot of new stuff to include Ukraine and the Russia-Ukraine conflict in it as well. Okay, number 6. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. And the Lord look upon you kindly and grant you peace. So remember, we are all in this together, so we can come out the other side together. I did not do a video on a recipe today. I will try to do one here shortly and get that out. I'm trying to get a short out every day between National Night Out and then auto maintenance and things like that today. I just kind of got a little bit busy. So remember, we're all in this together, so we can come out the other side together. Please be kind, polite, and respectful to each other. Thank you for the way you interact with each other here on the channel. Thank you for your honesty, your integrity. Thank you for being kind and polite to each other. I absolutely value you more than you'll ever know. because when we get out of this, togetherness is going to be the key. Take care, everybody. Please stay safe. And Butch, don't freeze. Take care. Bye-bye.